What is up, guys? Welcome back to another daily build video. This time we are checking out the Summit bundle for this week, and this week is the final week of the month, so we've got a car up for grabs this Summit. You're going to want to get these cars ready, even though it is a repeat car from the Crew 2. For all you Motorfest only players, this is a good time to grab this exclusive car. All right, let's go. All right, today's video, we're talking about the Ferrari 488 GT3, the Lamborghini Murcielago LP640 Drift Edition, and the Forsberg Racing Nissan 370Z East African Safari Z. It has to be an East African. It can't just be an African Safari. East African Safari. Anyways, let's get into the racing GT3 first. This 488 GT3 runs a really good time on my test course. Again, I test everything on Staying Ahead. That's in the vintage playlist if you want to go check it out. My time on this without Nitro Chemist is 2:39.422. That is good enough to put it in 8th place on my list of all of the racing cars that I've tested. And I've actually tested quite a few racing cars. This is a very good picture of what this car is capable of. There's only a few cars, there's like the top 15 or so that can run a sub 240 time on that, so it actually does really good. It feels great to drive and the tune feels very solid. I think this is going to be one of the better experiences in this week's Summit. We have a few oddball things that are going to be coming up in this Summit, like the rally course and the drifting. I'm not really sure if we're going to have an actual drift course or if we're going to be racing drift. We might be racing drift. I'm not really sure. Anyways, the 488 GT3 is a bright spot amongst these three cars. It actually performs very well. So anyway, here is my tune for the 488. All right, starting with the brake balance, we are at 40%. If we move down into the aero load rear, -5. Suspension, we're at +5 spring front, +2 spring rear, +15 compression front, +10 compression rear, +5 rebound front, +5 rebound rear. And then for the anti-roll bars, we're at +5 and +10 for the rear. And then for the camber, -0.25 in the front, -0.15 in the rear. All right, let's take a look at the Murcielago. All right, so for this one, as you know, I do 2 builds for all the drift cars just because I just never know when we're going to be doing a drift race or we're going to be doing an actual drift trial, and the tuning is completely different for those scenarios. One, you're going to want grip. On the other one, you don't want any grip at all. You want the car to slide around. So as you can tell, we need 2 separate tunes for these. Anyways, this particular car does pretty well on both. In fact, I actually set a new high score on Ebisu style, which is my test course for these cars. I got an 836,224. I'm not like the best drifter out there, but I feel like that's a pretty decent score, and it definitely beat out a lot of the other cars that are in the class. I think just it has a lot of speed. It keeps speed very well, even though I've done some things to sort of slow it down and make it a little bit more slidey. It actually does very well with speed, and that's one of the reasons why you can gain so many points on that Ebisu style circuit, because it really is about your distance drifted. And so if you were going faster, obviously you're going to drift more distance. That being said, let's take a look at the drift tune and then I'll give you the race tune. All right, so starting with the front grip, we're at -2. Then the rear grip is at -10. For the brake balance, we're all the way in the front, 80%. And if we move down into the springs, we're at +3 in the front, +10 in the rear, +9 in the front for compression, +20 in the rear, +9 in the front for rebound, and +20 in the rear. And then +10 on the ARB front, +5 on the ARB rear, -0.25 for the camber front, and -0.10 for the camber rear. All right, now as far as a race drift car goes, this thing is all right. It's not like the best. It actually performs okay. It's just not as fast as you would like it. It's certainly not as fast as the Hoonigan cars. The Evo and the Hoonicorn both are just absolutely insane compared to this one. Even the Evo 6 Flow Edition is much better than this, but it runs a decent time. I ran a 2:29.211, which is actually like, you know, 4th or 5th. Even though I haven't tested a lot of cars in the drift category, that's pretty good. It's not terrible. A lot of cars actually are above 230 on that course, so it does okay. I think we'll have an okay time with it. It's pretty grippy. It's an all-wheel drive car, and you know, that actually does help in those drift races. So here is my race tune for you. For the brake balance, we're at 40% in the front. We go down into the suspension, we're at -3 in the front, -7 for the spring rear, -3 for the compression front, -6 for the compression rear, -4 for rebound front, -4 for rebound rear. And then for the anti-roll bars, we're at +5 and +10. And then camber, of course, is at -0.25 on both. All right, that gives us a lateral G of 122, braking distance of 19.6, and then a 2.8 acceleration, which is actually really good for the drift category. So I think we'll have fun with this one. I don't think this is going to be a huge issue. It really just depends on if we're going to be doing a race or a drift trial. Either way, feels like these tunes do pretty well, and I think we'll be all right. All right, moving on to the last car for the video, and this one is definitely the most frustrating and weird. This car has a ton of torque steer. The back really likes to come loose. It feels like a 370 drift car, not a 370 rally car. And so we had to take some very extreme measures in terms of the tuning. It's just not that easy to drive, and it has a lot to do with your throttle. So there's just a lot of throttle steering that happens. If you have throttle turns, it actually does work out better. If you're in one gear higher on turns, that also works out better. But in terms of my test course, it actually runs a pretty okay time. It snags the 8th spot on the list with a 222.497. And you know, like I said, the tune is a little bit extreme, especially when you compare it to my other rally tunes. It just feels like the car is way too twitchy, way too reactive, and it causes you to lose control. So I've softened a lot. I want that suspension to eat all of those bumps, and it just really doesn't in a stock state. So here is the tune for you, starting with the brake balance at 49%, aero load front -7, suspension we're gonna have -10 in the front, -7 in the rear, compression is -20 in the front, -20 in the rear. And then rebounds, same thing, -20 in the front, -20 in the rear. This is the softest suspension that I've ever given a car in terms of the rally cars. I do this a little bit sometimes with the Rally Raid, but for rally, usually I'm a little bit stiffer on these suspension settings, but it is what it is, man. This car is very, very twitchy, and it has a lot of throttle steering. So this is something that you're gonna wanna play with. If you don't like how squishy this one is, you can actually increase these and try to find settings that actually work a little bit better for your driving style. For me, this was it. ARBs are at +10 in the front, +5 in the rear. Camber is -0.10 in the front, -0.25 in the rear. And that is it for this one. 119 lateral G, 18.7 braking, and a 3.4 acceleration. Like I said, the car is decent, but it's not a go-to car. It's not going to be the car that you go to for grand races, but we are going to have to use it here in the Summit. So enjoy the tunes, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this video was helpful as always, and we'll see you on the Summit stream tonight. All right, thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Trigger out.